And we're live. Welcome to Music Matters with Jason Tramm, and thank you so much for joining us for our unique podcast community where we explore the triumphs and challenges of the performing arts world as seen through the eyes of distinguished artists. And thank you so much for helping us grow. We hit 1,917 subscribers, and we grow every day thanks to people like you. So please remember to subscribe on YouTube and smash that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on our upcoming guests and topics. Please like and share our videos as it helps our community grow. And to see our over 280 past episodes, check out our website at www.jasontram.net. Again, that's www.jasontram with two M's.net. Today we have a wonderful guest. We have internationally acclaimed tenor Ricardo Tamura, born in Brazil, and his career has taken him all over the world. I know I saw him at the Metropolitan Opera. He was Cavaradossi. I think I saw his premiere, his debut. And he's performed at the Vienna Volksopera, Dusseldorf Opera, and he is currently in Nuremberg, and we're delighted that he's with us. Welcome, Ricardo.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
A pleasure to have you on the show. We've never officially met, but it's great to meet you virtually.
Right. Same here.
So tell me about your career. Did you always know you wanted to be an artist?
No, actually, not at all. I never intended to be an opera singer. I grew up not liking opera, and I saw my first opera when I was about 15, and I kind of fell in love with it. Well, actually, it was my second opera. The first one was La Boheme. I found La Boheme to be okay, but I didn't fall in love with it. But then I saw Tosca, and when I saw Tosca, I completely fell in love with the opera. But I didn't want to be a singer. Yeah. But I never intended to be an opera singer anyway. I wanted to be a scientist when I was a child. So I wanted to be a cosmologist. And in order to get that, because we didn't have cosmology as a graduate school in Brazil or as a college, I started by taking geology and then geophysics and then physics. I did 3 courses. And I intended to become a cosmologist, and I worked in that direction for many, many years. Well, when I was in college. And by the age, I started school earlier than most people. So by the age of 20, I had already 2 degrees. And I had applied for a place at MIT to do a special program there and had actually been accepted to that position.
Wow.
And so at that time, I never thought I was going to become an opera singer. I was having some voice lessons because, again, after I fell in love with opera, I sang in the shower with the records of Pavarotti, and to the terror of my neighbors and my parents who would close all the doors when I sang.
He's so loud.
Yeah, right. And but I didn't want to be a singer. My teacher told me, you should think about becoming an opera singer, but I said, no, you're crazy. I'm going to MIT. I never want to be a singer.
So did you study privately? Were you singing as a child? Did you sing in choirs growing up?
No, I had no touch with opera until I was 15. Then 15, I went to the opera house and watched La Boheme, found okay again, and 15 to 16, I saw Tosca, and that's when I fell in love with it. Around that time, I had started listening to Pavarotti too. So I was singing about the age of 15. I started singing in the shower. And I started taking some voice lessons. I started much later, when I was about 18 to 19. And my teacher said that I should pursue a career. And I said, no, that's out of the question completely. And again, I did all that scientific work, and then I finally got accepted to MIT. I got a full scholarship from the Canadian government to go there, representing Brazil. But then what happened was that, for some weird story, that my scholarship disappeared in the limbo of governments. The money disappeared and never got to MIT. And because of that, MIT said, well, we cannot take you unless you are able to send the money again. Of course, I could send the money again. It was a huge amount of money. And so I couldn't go, and I got very frustrated. And around that time, my teacher said to me, well, they're having auditions at the Opera House in Sao Paulo. And I was so fed up with everything that was happening because it was a really impossible story that happened. So I said, well, tell me when the audition is, I'll go and do it. And so he said, well, it's next week or whatever. I went there and I did the audition and got hired.
Amazing.
And that was for me like I absolutely did not believe on what was happening. I said, that cannot be true. And so I decided to get a second opinion, and I left Brazil. I said I need to do other auditions because even though I loved the opera house in São Paulo, I said, well, these people probably don't have any idea because they cannot think I'm an opera singer. And so I went to New York, and I met Licia Albanese, who was one of the greatest singers of all times. And she heard me and she said, oh, you have a voice, you have to become a singer. And when she said that, I said, well, maybe I should consider it. And it took me a couple of months still to decide. And then at that time, another mysterious event happened that I got accepted to the Juilliard School without really applying for it. It was a very weird story because I had done an audition for the Juilliard Opera Center and wasn't taken. And they asked me if I wanted to apply for the regular program. I said no. But somehow, a couple of weeks later, I got a letter that I had been accepted to the regular program. So I went after everything that had happened. And that's how it all started.
Licia Albanese is such a legend in the field. My mentor, Alfredo Filippini, who was quite a famous conductor, and he was Franco Corelli's pianist, introduced me to her. And I went to dinner with her when she was over 100 years old. I went to dinner with her and some of my friends, and what an amazing woman she was.
Yes, yes. I had the privilege to meet her when she was still not 80, but she was probably over 80 because officially she was, I think, 4 years younger. So I met her at around the age of 78, 79, which was already 82, 83.
She was a spry 80 years old, but she was very sharp 80 years old.
Yes, yes, yes.
She was very much involved in watching. And I love these legends in the field who have such an interest in watching the next generation come up. It's such a wonderful thing to watch.
Yes, yes. But she was really somebody special. I remember walking with her on the streets of New York, and young people would just turn around and stare at her and say, who's that person? She wasn't talking, she wasn't doing anything crazy, she wasn't dressed weirdly, but she had this kind of aura that when she walked, people turn and look, that must be somebody important somehow. I always found that to be very fascinating.
It's amazing how some people just radiate that energy.
Right. Yes.
So what a great story going from the science background. Were your parents scientists?
My mother was a teacher. She's retired now. My father was somebody that dealt. My father passed away, but she used to work with finances for the state. She was like a financial controller from the state, so to speak.
What were they like when you decided to change courses so suddenly and drastically? What was it like for your parents?
Well, they were both shocked because my father always tried to support me as well as he could. And when I got to university and I wanted to get to MIT, I could get any books I wanted. My father would buy me any book I wanted. He didn't have a lot of money, but once he made a credit, he got a loan from the bank to buy me an amount of books that was about the price of a small car. Because I went to a bookstore that was going to close in São Paulo, and he left me there for like 3 hours. When he came back, I had selected a pile of books that was higher than I was. And he made a huge effort to purchase all those books for me, and we still have them all at home. And after all these stories, after all the books, at some point I said, I'm sorry, I'm becoming an opera singer now. And so, of course, it was a shock for him. But he was really happy. He was still alive when I had my debut at the Met. He could not come there. But he was really, really proud that I got that far. My mother is still alive, and she's also happy that I became an opera singer as well.
Well, you've gone from studying the stars to being one of the stars. So what an incredible story.
Well,
Tell us about your trip to your beginning into Europe and going from Brazil to Europe. What was that like as a young singer?
I first came to New York. I went to Juilliard, and when I was at Juilliard, I wasn't very happy there because in that year my teacher had cancer and she couldn't teach a lot, and I was having a full week of all kinds of disciplines, but I didn't have voice, and I had the feeling I was wasting time there. And then some people talked to me about coming to Europe to study with Carlo Bergonzi.
Wow.
And I said, well, if I could go there and he would take me, I would try that. And so I came to Italy, did an audition for him. He decided he wanted to work with me. And so I went back to New York. I said, I want to take a leave of absence to go to Italy. But there was a problem. They said, well, the year has already begun, the school year. I still hadn't had any classes, but the school year had begun. So they said, if we give you a leave of absence, you lose your scholarship. And I said, well, that's okay. But, oh, no, it's not okay because then you have to pay for the whole year that has already started. And I said, well, what if I go to Europe and don't come back? Well, if you don't come back, then you don't have to pay anything. And so I said, okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I didn't take a leave of absence. I left school and came to Italy and studied with Carlo Bergonzi. That was incredible to meet Carlo Bergonzi, but he wasn't a great teacher for people who could not sing. So it was another little deception that I had. And at that point, Licia Albanese said to me, you know what? You are wasting too much time. I'm going to teach you.
Oh.
And actually, she didn't have any private students. She had very few people that she coached privately. I believe not more than two people up to that day.
I didn't know she taught at all. That's amazing.
Right. But she said, I'm going to teach you. So I went there to New York and I was having voice lessons regularly with her many times a week. And I learned a lot from her. And she became like a second mother for me. She would cook dinner and it was great. It was like family all the time. And I learned very, very much from her. And then at some point, I did an audition for the opera studio in Zurich, which at the time was the best opera studio in the world, and I got accepted there. And I went to Zurich, and from Zurich, I got my first job in Germany, and that's how it all started.
And what did you learn? What did Zurich teach you being around that amazing environment in such a prestigious house?
Well, at the beginning was everything was a big dream. When you first came from Brazil, you must imagine when I first went to the opera house in São Paulo and I saw Tosca, I said my biggest dream would be one day to stand on that stage. I didn't want to become a singer at that time, but I said I would have a huge dream to one day stand on that stage and sing one note. If that ever happens, I'll be the happiest person on earth. And it turns out that I got hired years later to the opera house. I never got to sing there though, because when I was supposed to have done my first performance was the time when I went to Juilliard. So I had to stop there and go to Juilliard. And but then coming to Europe, to Switzerland first, and I did some small roles in the opera house as a member of the opera studio, and that was all magical at that time. And then I got my first job in Germany, and everything was fantastic, except that then I got confronted with what it means to be an opera singer in Germany, which is not that easy. But it was still a very nice experience at the beginning. I suffered a little bit, but it was nice.
And we're back. We lost each other. Technology is amazing when it works, but sometimes there's a little hiccups on the way. But so you made your debut
Right.
in the studio in Zurich, and you're singing in this incredible house. Tell us how your career grew after that.
Sorry, I hear you, but I didn't hear
Oh,
the question.
so what was it like after you were in this incredible environment, and how'd your career grow after that?
Well, I went to this first house. I was a little bit shocked by the way people work in Germany because I never expected it to be that intense. It was really a lot of work per day. And just to give you an idea, the first piece I ever sang, my debut, my operatic debut, was with an operetta called Maske in Blau, which is a German operetta by a composer called Fred Raimund. And because that was going to be my debut, I asked them to send me ahead of time the music. And so they sent me the music, and it was a book like this thick. And I learned all the music, and I came well prepared to do my first role. The moment I got there, first day of rehearsals, they say, "Oh, by the way, Ricardo, this book is the textbook." And I said, "I'm sorry. Yeah, these are the dialogues that you have to learn in German."
Oh no.
And I didn't speak a word of German at that time. So I had to really work like crazy to get those dialogues. I don't think I did a fantastic job speaking them. I learned everything from memory, but nowadays, years later, at the moment, I was very happy with what I had done. But years later, looking back, I said, well, probably I didn't speak those words as I should have. But that was my story. So I had the beginning was really a shock. You get there, imagine you are already doing stage rehearsals, and premiere is happening in some weeks, and you have to learn now a huge book of words. And as I was doing that, and we are getting to the end rehearsals for that, I already got the next role with a new score that I had to learn. And so it was really for somebody who didn't expect that, because I had no idea how this job works, was a little bit of a shock at the beginning. But now, let's say after I had survived that, then I got used to it.
Did your scientific mind help you learn? And did memorization come easy to you?
I don't know. I always had an easiness to memorize words and texts. And so, but it didn't help me when the words were in German, because then I didn't know exactly what I was saying at the time. But I would say maybe, but I cannot be sure of that. I never tried the other alternative, so I cannot tell you.
It's fascinating when you hear people who come from like a non-traditional way into the field, and there's advantages and disadvantages of everything. What were some of the advantages you brought to this career?
Well, I would say that being a scientist has helped me with a lot of things in terms of how to approach the roles, and the feeling that I needed to learn everything about the, the history that is involved and all of that. And it brought some advantages. But I think that the main advantage that the scientific career has brought me was to learn the vocal technique later. So to become a voice teacher, for example, that preparation has helped me very, very much. And I can only know the things I know today because of that. Because I always had this kind of very analytical mind that I could not accept that, oh, you have to do this because that's the way it is. I had to understand everything from the ground. And that has helped me a lot. It creates some problems too, because sometimes when you are learning to sing, you just have to do it, and you don't need to understand exactly how it works. And I always had a problem with that. But once you finally understand how it works, then it helps quite a lot. And
Did
it
you
took
ever
me
get to work with Jerome Hines? Another, I think he was an engineer, a trained engineer.
Yes, I I met them all. I never worked with Jerome Himes. I spoke with him a lot, but I never worked with him. To work, technically speaking, I worked with Lita Albanese, with Franco Corelli, and with Carlo Bergonzi from those big names. But I met them all. I had great chats with Robert Merrill, for example, was a very, very nice person. And I actually, through Lita Albanese, I got to meet almost all the singers that were still alive at the time, the big names. And that has been also something, because these people always told me things, and they all told me some fragment of what the art and the technique should be. And that's another point where the maybe the scientific mind has helped to put all of that together. So with time, I I started becoming better and better in the technique, because I could aggregate all that information that I had received through those years in my life, together with other information that I got later. So for that matter, my previous career has been very, very helpful.
It's fascinating. So now you're finishing up your work at the Opera House and your Zurich Opera House. What was the next stage of the career?
Well, then I had my debut in Kassel. That was the operetta I was talking about. And then I stayed there, and then I started. I moved to other opera houses within Germany, and then we start doing guesting, because at the beginning you start in Germany. They have two kinds of contract. You have a fixed yearly contract where you have to be at the opera house and do everything they tell you, and you get paid monthly, or you can get you work as a guest and you get contracts just to do a certain production. And a couple of years later, after my debut, I was already getting invitations that very next year to do guest work. And 2 years later, then I decided to start increasing my guest work. And then some years later, I became a complete freelancer. And from that moment on, to that point, it was hard, because when you have an yearly contract, you have the money to pay the rent, and that is always a very big security. And to make the jump from a yearly paid person to become a freelancer is very scary. So at the beginning, I was very careful about it. I didn't want to move to the freelancing immediately. But I found out that the moment I did that, my offers to become a guest singer, they increased a lot. I was afraid that what if I don't get any offers anymore and I'll just starve? But it helped somehow. I was very lucky. It doesn't happen to everybody. But in my case, the moment I became a pure freelancer, I started getting invitations from all over the places. And I sang in many, many opera houses in Germany and in Europe, but never at the Met. And I tried to get to the Met, and I had actually started to give up. I thought, well, if I couldn't make it in these many years, I won't get there, because I'm getting old, and it's never going to happen. And then, when I had given up the idea of coming to the Met, suddenly I got a contract there, and that's how I had my debut in Tosca, which you probably saw. And I was very happy about that, because Lita Albanese went to watch me sing, and that was her very last performance that she saw. The very last appearance that she did in an opera house was my debut.
Wow. What did she say after the show?
She was very happy, and she sang along. People told me, I wasn't sitting with her, but she had a box, the parterre box, and she was singing through through the whole thing.
I think she was sitting with a friend of mine who's still alive. She's in her mid-90s and was friends with all that generation of singers. It's a very small world in New York.
Yeah. Who was the friend?
Do you know Luna Kaufmann?
Who?
Luna Kaufmann? Polish woman?
No, I don't know her.
Holocaust survivor and author, and she's been on my show.
Okay, all right.
She took me out to dinner and lunch with her several times, and we had lunch with Roberta Peters and Netta Cassay and all those wonderful generation of artists.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? And then you get
I learned
invited.
so much by being around them,
Yeah, right.
asking about the conductors they'd worked with and who they enjoyed working with. Is just like a masterclass for me in the history lesson.
Yeah. I also met Silly Ping at that time, so we talked also a little bit, a few times.
He was my musical father, so he
Yeah,
was a lovely man.
yeah.
So with making your Metropolitan debut, what was it like backstage? And do you get really nervous when you perform?
Well, to be at the match, knowing that I was going to have my debut, was for somebody that years before only wanted to stand on the Opera House in São Paulo and sing one note, was actually very, very incredible. It was like I couldn't believe it, and of course, I was very nervous. However, on the day of the performance, you know, uh, backstage of the match, it's huge, and they have different settings there. And what happened was that before I had my first entrance, the stage assistant, the regie, what's the name in English, the assistant of direction, took me to the stage to show me where I had to go for my first entrance. And we walked there, and I went back. So in the dressing room, the call comes, I have to go. When I have to go, there was a wall, there was a wooden wall from stage that hadn't been there anymore before when I walked in. So it was the way I had gone before was closed. And so I said, well, now how can I get to the stage? And then I saw that there was a door to my left. I went there and I got through that door. But then I was in a different construction. It was not Tosca. It was another opera that has been moved to the left side. And I said, how can I get to the stage now from here? Because I had to go all the way back and there wasn't enough time. And I started here in the sacristan in the Tosca that sings before me, and I in the different stage construction on the other side of and I could not go get through. So I had to climb on that stage, and I don't know how I did that, but it's because of the emergency. I
Amazing.
just climbed through the whole thing, and I jumped on the other side, and I got to the stage 2 seconds before I had to go in.
Talk about an exciting debut. Wow.
Right. But then I was not nervous anymore because I got such a scare from that I was totally relaxed. Well, not relaxed, but I wasn't nervous anymore that I had to have my debut. I completely forgot about that.
Once you finished it, what was it like hearing the applause and looking out there and taking your curtain call?
Yeah, that was amazing. That was a feeling that one never forgets because it was a very very touching moment. And even if I think of it now, I still get touched because you can imagine is a boy from Brazil that never wanted to become an opera singer suddenly, without knowing how gets to the Met, has his debut as one of the biggest roles that there is in the Italian repertoire, and the applause was really great. So for me, it was an unforgettable moment to do that. It was really really amazing.
And you've been back. You did the Don Carlo performance a few years later. What was it like to return
Right.
once again and do that incredible role?
Yes, I got after that performance, I immediately got invited to come back to do Don Carlo and to cover Un Ballo in Maschera the next season. For Don Carlo, I had one show planned, and Un Ballo in Maschera had no shows. And then I came again, and I had the fortune or the scare of having to jump in for two live broadcasts from the stage for Don Carlo and for Ballo at the very last moment without knowing that I was supposed to sing until like 1 hour before. And for example, for the Don Carlo, I had asked them because I knew that the colleague wasn't feeling too well. But they said, no, Ricardo, he's going to sing. Don't worry, nothing's going to happen.
Famous
And
last
because,
words.
yeah, that was a matinee performance at 12:30, I think, of Don Carlo, which is not easy to sing at 12:30 in the morning,
Not
let's
the
say.
easiest thing ever.
Yeah. And so I got up at 7 o'clock that morning and I said, I'm going to get ready for the performance. called the theater. They said, no, we are not going to go in. So you can relax. So I went back to bed and lay down again. And about some hours later, like 10:30, more or less, performance was 12:30, my phone rings and they say, Ricardo, where are you? I said, I'm in bed. Come to the theater immediately because you have to go in. So that was my Don Carlo story. Uh, it was a much longer story than that, but I'm going to cut it short. And then sometime later, same thing happened with Ballo in Maschera. And I had to jump in again, although everybody told me I wasn't singing. And I went in without even seeing James Levine in my life. He called me at the dressing room, said, Mr. Tamura, I heard you are singing tonight. Just whatever you want, I'll be with you. And that's how it worked. And it was quite good, but that was also very scary.
Wow, that must be fascinating to have to perform on such short notice.
Yes, yes.
So, I mean, you're in the midst of a world-class career. You're traveling all over Europe and back and forth.
Yeah.
I guess it's very easy to lose sight of that. Now, you had a very serious health concern in the middle of career. Tell us about that.
It had actually started. I had my debut in Tosca in 2013, December. And in 2014, I had a car accident in Germany. And after that car accident, it was not my fault. Some truck just hit me on the highway. And after that car accident, things started to change, but I didn't know why. And it probably had no relation to what came after, but I consider that to be a turning point because after that, I started feeling different things that I didn't feel before. And it happened that sometime later, uh, then I had my Don Carlo. But I think even before the Don Carlo, I don't remember, but I think a few weeks before the Don Carlo, I had a case of food poisoning in Germany that I never understood what that food poisoning was until somebody on Facebook told me, Ricardo, because I had been to a Japanese restaurant, and the person said, maybe you had some of that fugu, the that poisonous
The
fish that
blowfish,
Japanese
right?
eat. I said, no, that cannot be the case because it was a very good restaurant. I'm totally sure that I didn't have that. But the person said, well, but the symptoms you are describing are not of food poisoning. They are symptoms of a neurological problem. And that can be explained by by the poison of that fish. And I said, well, could be, but I'm quite sure I didn't have that fish. Anyhow, I was at the Met in 2015 for the broadcast of Don Carlo, Ballo, but things had been changed. I wasn't the same anymore during that time. And then, but things went well. I got invited to come back again in 2016 to do Turido in Cavalleria Rusticana. But I kept feeling progressively weirder from what happened before, and I didn't know what was going on. Then I got invited to do my first opera in my home city of São Paulo. I had never sung in São Paulo to that day, and I went there to do Fidelio by Beethoven. And in that production, I had wonderful rehearsals. Everything went well. And then when I had my performance, it was a concert performance. When I had my performance, there was something really weird that happened that I was following the whole thing. And suddenly I'm hearing the music and I said, oh yeah, and now the tenor should be singing. And then I said, wait a moment, I'm the tenor. Why am I not singing? And it was just for a short moment. Of course, nobody realized what was happening. But I said, why didn't I sing that sentence there somehow? And it was weird. And then I got a fever after that had no explanation whatsoever. And people said, well, there was a big dengue epidemic in Brazil. They said, maybe you got dengue. But I went to many doctors. They tested everything. There was no dengue. And the problems kept going on and on. Nobody understood what happened. And sometime later, I don't know if it was related or not, but probably was, I got a major hemorrhagic stroke in
Mm.
Germany. it was really bad. I was supposed to fly to Japan on the next day, and I was very lucky that it happened when I was still home. And but it was major. When I got to the hospital, even though things happened very quickly, they told my wife that she should get ready for the fact that I was either going to die or woke up and be a vegetable, because I had lost probably every single function in my body, because
Wow.
the damage to the brain had been really big. And so she immediately called all the agents, canceled all the contracts that I had coming up and everything. We didn't. Are you still there?
Yes, we're still here. Keep going.
Yes. So, but then, as it turned out, I woke up the next day, and not the next day, a few days later, I woke up. The doctors came to me and said, "Can you raise your right hand?" And I said, "Well, why not?" And the left, yes,
Wow.
and the legs, and I could move everything. So my wife came to me in the room, started talking to me in Portuguese, in English, and in German, and in French, and I could answer in all the languages.
Wow.
And I could remember everything. I didn't lose any memory. I didn't lose any movement. I didn't lose any speech. Nobody understood, was really a kind of a miracle.
Yeah, it's really you.
And the doctors told me you need to wait at least three. Yes, sorry.
Oh, please keep going.
Yeah. So the doctors had told me you have to, because I asked, what about singing? Can I go back to singing? And they said, well, you have to wait at least 3 years until you can do anything. But I said I cannot wait 3 years. I first I needed to keep singing somehow. I sang in the hospital. Uh, Once I started singing at the hospital at 3 o'clock in the morning, I didn't know how late it was, and I said, "Oh, let me see if my voice still works." And I started singing full voice. The next day, I had a room just for myself because everybody asked to move out. But I said, my voice is working. I have to go back to singing. And the doctor said to me, well, actually, we wouldn't recommend you to go back, but it seems that you have been extremely lucky. So if you would like to try, being very careful, have a device to measure your blood pressure and all the bodily functions all the time, if everything is working well. And by doing that with all kinds of tests, I was able to do that 10 weeks after the stroke. Are you still
Unreal,
there?
unreal. So, 10 weeks after suffering a major hemorrhagic stroke, you were able to get back into singing again.
Hello? Can you
Hello?
hear me?
I can hear you. We're having some technical challenges. We will figure this out. We're just going to make sure we connect with Ricardo and to this amazing story.
Because I could still sing
We're
and I
back on the
decided
air.
to
So,
try. I went back
10
to the
weeks.
stage to take part in a benefit concert for the UNICEF that I had been doing for many years. And they said, Ricardo, if you want to try out with us, even if you just appear there and say hello, we will all be very happy to see you. So if you want to try to sing, there's no risk. Whatever happens is going to be fine. So I went there under those conditions and I did sing completely everything I was supposed to sing, full voice, everything worked. And then I said, well, maybe I can start singing again. And some days after that, I even did a complete performance of Tosca in concert form in an opera house that had engaged me before I had the stroke. And they said, Ricardo, if you can sing, you can come. So I went there and I did the performance. It went well. Then a few weeks later, I got invited to jump in for a Carmen performance in Nuremberg, where I live, and including fight scene. You have a
Oh,
knife
wow.
fight. And I said, well, I don't know if I can do that, but I was able to jump into the rehearsals and we could do everything with the scene. And so that for me was, I said, well, now I believe I can go back to the job. And then I went fully back to singing again. And then shortly after that, I got an invitation to do Rienzi by Richard Wagner, which is one of the biggest roles in the literature for a tenor. And I didn't know anything about Rienzi. I never had done any note of that opera, and I had to learn it from scratch. And I was able to do it. So that was for me the moment when I said, well, if I can move, I can sing, I can do fight scenes, and I can learn a huge role from scratch. So I can officially go back to the job. And
What an
that
incredible,
was when I said I can work again normally.
what an incredible turn of
Yeah,
life
it was really
events.
incredible. But then, unfortunately, right. But as I was getting back with full speed, then Corona hit us, and then everything got closed down, and I had to stop again. But again, in this time, then when I stopped through Corona, I got to learn very much about the vocal technique. So I kind of took away all the edges that I still had that I didn't quite understand. And I actually intend to write a book now about vocal technique, because I think I was able, I tell myself, I believe that's true, that I was able to reconstruct what should be the old Italian school of singing, combining all the information I had gathered through my life with all the singers that I met, plus all the information that I did myself, I learned myself on stage. And so I put together a method that seems to work quite well, and it works for me too. I'm singing now better than I ever did, and I can teach people also in a very short time to achieve a very high level. And so Corona has helped me in that sense too, because things moved forward, even though in terms of theaters and performances, that was another break that I had to stop again.
Yeah, what an amazing turn of events, and to what was it like coming back after such such a sudden and abrupt stop? At your level of career, you're probably booked 3, 4 years and 5 years in advance. What was it like to have to stop and then reassess again?
Well, when I had the stroke and my wife had to cancel all the contracts, it's like you are in a train that's going fast, and then you jump off. It's very hard to get back in. So for the first moment, I said, well, I'm gonna go back to singing, but nothing's gonna happen for quite a while. But then I got started being invited to jumping, for example, that Carmen that happened in Nuremberg, and then others jumping in productions. And then I started getting offers to do big things like the Rienzi that I told you. And everything started moving again until Corona hit. And when Corona hit, then again, there was another jumping of the train. So things are now slower than they were before all of this happened. But I'm still singing, and I still enjoy singing. I still can sing well, I believe, and with easiness, and uh, I can still take a high C back into piano. So everything is still working. And but I started expanding my teaching activities now, and I got nominated to be artistic director of an organization in Italy called Associazione Arturo Toscanini, and we are doing projects there that go in the direction of producing, maybe producing operas. We haven't produced produce any opera to the moment, but we produce concerts, we do courses and master courses and stuff like that. It has just started, but I think it has a very big future. This project that we're doing, we are getting collaborations from different countries as well, and I'm very excited about this new development. Even though I don't want to stop singing yet, I still have many years ahead as a singer, I suppose. But this other part of the business has been fascinating me more and more, and I'm now divided between the two.
How special that you get to share all that knowledge you gained in a lifetime of exposure in the field to the next generation and get to foster the next generation of great singers. It's very special that you're doing this.
Yes, it's for me. It's I say I love to sing, and to sing has been the most important thing in my life ever since I became a singer. But now I like this kind of activity almost as much. I would say that if I had to choose, there's a little bit of an edge towards singing than towards teaching, but it's a very small difference now. I enjoy it almost as much, and especially when you get the feeling that you have a student. That has happened to me very recently. I was giving a master class, and then you get a singer that has a beautiful voice but never knew what to do with the voice, and suddenly they have a kind of enlightenment and they say, oh my god, how am I singing? It's and that the feeling in that moment is almost as great as the feeling of getting the applause after my Met debut at the Met. So it's really something amazing.
Well, God has many plans for you, and and really, you seem to be someone who just is open to great things and try new things, and nothing can keep you down. That's pretty amazing. Do you still feel any effects of the? How do you?
Yeah, incredibly, I would say. Sorry.
We had a click there. Must have been something on the call. So keep going.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm surprised myself to the situation of everything that I've been gone through, and I could always somehow stand up and keep going. I didn't think when I was a child that I would have this kind of energy, but somehow it seems to be like that. And I started to believe in destiny through my life after everything that happened to me. I believe we do have choices, but I think there is somehow a hand that guides you through everything. And now I'm just waiting to see what is planned for me in the future. I have no idea. And I try to live day by day and see where destiny is going to be taking me.
Very exciting. Well, I think there are great things in store, both as a performer and as a teacher and administrator. And best of luck with your festival. And what do you have coming up next?
Well, I have some performances coming up in Germany. We are doing some in Italy. We are doing. I'm doing another course now in August. Then I'll be doing a course in Spain, which was not planned at all. But I'm going to do a master class in Spain, invited by somebody that I met through the internet as well, that heard about my work, has invited me to come to Spain. So although I have some performances coming up towards the end of the year, the teaching activity is now taking my whole time, and we have to develop projects because now in Italy for that association we have to do things for Christmas, and we have to plan the Christmas season, and I'm totally involved with that. We might even do a vocal competition, and there are many things we are working on. We'll see what's going to happen.
All so exciting. I do a lot of production work here. I'm a conductor, and I do a lot of production. If you ever have singers, please send them my way. If you have singers who are looking to make their American debuts, if you got some people who are I've heard before, send them over here.
That's fantastic information that you're giving me, because we're looking for cooperation with other people in other countries. We already have a few people in many different countries cooperating with us, but in America we still don't have anybody. So that is a very great information that you're giving me, and I'll get back to you on that for sure.
Music is such a bridge. That's one of the things that so much in life separates us, whether it's religion or politics or governments. But music's one of the things that certainly can connect our broken world.
Yes. By the way, one thing that I learned after my stroke is that musicians have a different brain. Apparently, a neurosurgeon can recognize the brain of a musician just by looking at it. And they suppose that the fact that I did so many things in my life and became a musician was the thing that saved me from having that destruction from the brain that I was supposed to have had. Because the brain has so many interconnections there among the neurons that even though I had significant damage to the brain, everything still kept working well. And being a musician has been a big, big part of that, according to the doctors.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing the way that they show a graph of the brain while it's thinking, while it's reading music. There's the decoding, there's the interpreting, all that happens instantaneously.
Yeah.
It's so mysterious. The brain is like, whenever I read about or watch documentaries on neuroscience, how little we know.
Exactly. I was very, it's also interesting. Before I had my stroke, I have been always very interested on the brain, in the brain. So I have here in my home, I have many books about the brain and neurology. And I was very fascinated by everything. But now I became like a living experiment through the things that are written there. And I can tell many things about how the brain works that I never understood before. But once you have an event like that, it's actually fascinating to see how much your brain did before that you didn't know about, and how you can go back to that or partially go back to that by understanding how all these things work. So it's really amazing.
Truly amazing, and you are truly a miracle. I mean, the fact that you came back so quickly and that you're able to, get back on that train and start your and keep going with, you slowed down, but you're back at it again. And COVID, luckily, was an entire world slowing down, so we're all slowed down together. But people like yourself and myself, we just get right back to moving again.
Yes, yes. But again, as I said, as everything was slowing down, this opportunity in Italy with this association has appeared. And so, because I told you I believe in destiny, I learned to believe in destiny in my life. Maybe destiny is showing me another way that I should make a turn and try to combine everything together. So let's see where life is going to take me. I have no idea.
Any plans to sing La Forza del Destino?
Yeah, that's a role that I've never sung in my life, Forza del Destino, but I do believe in it. And by the way, that's an opera that in Brazil people say it brings bad luck.
I've heard
Everybody they do Forza del Destino in Brazil, some tragedy happens. Therefore they don't do it anymore that often in Brazil. And for that reason, I avoided doing this role at the beginning of my career. I had the chance, and later on, I never got a chance. Somehow, it always went by, and I never had the chance to do. But I really would like to do it now. My last offer was last year, but I couldn't do it because of the dates. And but we'll see.
I just think it's perfectly aligns with your philosophy.
And the force of the
Well, whether it's that, whether it's
Right.
meant to
Yes.
be, I hope that many great things are in store for you, and it's excited to hear what's next. I'm going to be in Italy at the end of September. Hope we get to meet up in person.
Where will you be there?
I'm conducting in Rome and Florence at the end, but I'll be in Austria and around Germany next March. So it's a small world.
Okay. Yes, I hope we get to meet. In Italy, I'll be doing these projects are all in a city of Taranto or Tarent, I think it's called in English, which is all the way south. It's like the soul of the boot, of the Italian boot. And it's a wonderful area, actually. Fantastic food, very nice people, but it's kind of far from Rome and from Florence, but maybe we can meet somewhere, or in Germany. Who knows?
It's such a small world. Well,
It
I
will be a
wish you.
pleasure to meet you.
Where can people go to find out more about you?
Well, that's hard. I have a website, but I don't actually regularly update my website because I must say, in 1989 I was a computer science teacher, but now I can say I don't understand anything about computers, or very little. But people can follow me on Facebook or Instagram, and I post regularly stuff there. My website also is more or less up to date, but I don't really. I have somebody that helps me with that, but I don't always have the time to go there and put the latest news in the website. So usually I post everything on Facebook or on Instagram.
It's the new public square on social media: Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, I guess.
No, I don't have TikTok yet. I don't
Me either.
know how to use that.
Yeah. I've got 4 kids, so
I'm a dinosaur.
My children show me how to use them. I don't want to learn TikTok, but someday I'm going to learn how to use it just because the podcast we promoted on there.
Exactly.
Well, Ricardo, it's a blessing to meet you.
Some of my younger colleagues tell me, "Oh,
you need some of your students to show you."
I was just gonna say, people tell me the same thing. It's very easy. You just have to do that and that, and I say, no, I'm sorry. You're talking to a dinosaur. I don't find that easy at all. No.
Well, it's a blessing to meet you, and continued success in all you're doing and your great work with fostering the young people who are on the way up, and singing in great houses. And wish you every blessing and success.
Thank you very much. Same to you. All the blessings, and stay well. And I hope we can meet in person very soon somewhere.
All the best. Thank you for joining us on Music Matters with Jason Tramm. Please remember to subscribe on YouTube and smash that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on our upcoming guests and topics. We love when you like and share our videos. And remember, keep music alive.